Hi guys, once again, I'm Venkat. This is Sajid, and we're part of Luma World. Today we have with us Abeer, who is the brains behind the game of poll, which has a unique take on Indian democracy and how you can actually be involved in that process through a wonderful little game. Abeer, over to you. Please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us a lot about poll.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me here. So the poll is not a small game. It's a game that weighs about 2.1 kilos, and so whenever we go to schools and colleges, and everyone says, "Wow, this is heavy," and that's our moment to crack a dad joke called, "Yeah, democracy is heavy." So what we do is um, so a little bit about me before I tell you of what the game is. I am a journalist and a social science researcher who basically traveled and saw a bunch of elections and was confronted by the unidirectional nature of information. That you go talk to people, the journalist talks to a bunch of people, but when that information gets put into an article, it's just the user is reading it. There is no way that a person sitting in Kashmir or a person sitting in Chennai reading the Hindu or Indian Express or the magazine Hard News where I wrote would be able to interact with the written word, right? Like it if you have doubts, if you have experiential issues, it's not dealing with that. Now
Yeah.
when it comes to so I think the most valuable structure in a democracy is open information and journalism. So don't misunderstand me in the sense that like the journalist is absolutely essential and important, but because of the nature of the way information is imparted to the young people, one both in terms of access and second in terms of like pedagogy or methodology, uh,
Yeah.
uh, it is not a two-way conversation or a multi-stakeholder like conversation. It is a one-way street. While power, democracy, voting, elections are not a unidirectional movement. The other thing that one sees is that there is such an overemphasis on voting as an articulation of democratic rights and democratic spaces and your democratic duty. Like most conversations end up like, bro, do you vote? Like as a strange flex. But voting happens once every 5 years, but your citizens for all of those days otherwise. And there is no one talking to you about citizenship. There is no one talking to you about how you can learn to be a problem solver or even a better person in society. Now the poll does not do this. The poll
Okay.
mm, taps into the basic shittiness of every individual and is an exercise in political apathy and attrition. But in that, it has a very, very important lesson. So what we did with the poll, and when running around trying to figure out how do you help and like increase the penetration of democracy, there is no like big cap, small cap, market cap like funder for this, right? There is Jeff Bezos is not going to be like, here, beta, take some money and let's strengthen labor unions and labor rights, or like improve market transparency in that will sort of build that. No one is going to do that. So being housed in an NGO and like being lucky enough to get a grant from like a foundation like the Frederick Naumann, which is invested in democracy, in like transparency, in human rights, all of that,
Yeah.
which are things that keep me up at night. And I realize that it's not people who,
Yeah.
it's not everyone's cup of tea. And to find people who are like-minded, to find people who are invested in the same sort of purpose or objective as you is just phenomenal. So what we did was we realized in the run up to the 2019 elections that the conversation is becoming exceedingly one sided. You have TV screaming at you on one end, you have the newspapers being black and white on the other. The
Yeah.
conversations are getting more polarized. And there was this one articulation of India that my grandfather, my father, like all of our parents certainly lived with, which was one of conversation and the adda. Like four people, five people sitting around a coffee shop or a chai or a coffee house or this or that, and being able to talk about like deeply problematic, difficult topics, but not calling, not trolling, not like hurling abuses. There is a certain
Yeah.
softness that represented a conversation, right? So that's what we wanted to build in. We wanted to build back the idea of deliberative democracy into the public sphere. And while and what really helps you is a simulation, and that's what the poll is. The poll
Yeah.
is a game that puts regular people like you, me, and everyone else at the helm of a political party. You follow the entire structure of the Indian election. You start off with reading and understanding the constituencies and their problems. Then you draft
Yeah.
your manifesto. Then you go and support the policies that you have made while listening to everyone else's points and arguing and giving them support in a position where your policy might cut theirs, but you have to learn
Hmm.
that a people solution is a people solution. So but that also leads to sort of negotiation because you need voting to keep people on. So in the first round you will vote, in the second round you will do strategy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that shift from deliberation to strategy is also something that we've brought out. um the Then after that you have like manpower and money, and you campaign for 4 days, and in the end
Yeah.
whoever wins the constituency takes it back. So that's what we did. We built the journey from point A to point B of the process of electoral functioning, and that's what we did.
That's truly amazing because, like, talking about such a heavy topic of politics and gamifying it such that people can actually participate in something like this, whereas a common man who usually tries to stay away from politics. I mean, I'm just talking about myself as an example, where it took me a lot of time to understand Indian politics and how democracy functions over here. But definitely having games like these will probably make the process much more easier, much more transparent, I would say. What were the demographics that you've tested with, and what were the different age groups that you tested the game with?
Okay, so this is super interesting. I would like to answer my question by your answer this question by just pointing out few things that you said. One, that
Yeah.
difficult and dense topic of politics, a common man like you, and how do you improve participation? Now, these three things were the driving force behind us as well. But when
Okay.
and you guys as game developers know that the assumption that you go in to build with a game and you end up playing, and then that world just completely flips, right? Like
Mm.
sometimes that the assertion or assumptions that you go in with aren't the results that you get. So now what I would like to say is, Ajay, that you're not a common person, you're an uncommon person. There is uh and I will tell you why we all, the three of us and possibly people listening to this podcast, are uncommon people. We are uncommon people because we do not need to interact with the state on a daily basis. It
Okay.
doesn't matter who your SHO, IO, or like your municipal cooperator, who your MLA is, as a matter of fact. Their
Yeah.
existence, their caste, their religion, all of that makes no difference to your life. But if you go to like Nasik, like 20 kilometers from Nasik, to
Mm.
a small like village or a hamlet, or the more away from urban centers you go, you will realize that the caste of your MLA means so much more to you than you'd imagine, or who your
Wow.
cooperator is,
Yeah.
because these are realities that make a huge difference to people's lives than ours. There is a certain urban apathy towards politics which shrouds it in a certain dirtiness or non-participation, right? It is cool to not participate because our education system makes it like that. There is no
Yeah.
point that does it sort of demystify the process of politics, because they want us to be apolitical. They want us to
Yeah.
cease to ask questions, because the
Exactly.
moment active citizenship kicks in, then you have uh and this is the question that we sort of like had and were constantly confronted with, right? Is that you have 543 MPs in India. 543, correct? You have a population of 1.25 billion. On
Hmm.
average, a seat is 15 lakh people, right?
Hmm.
Which sort of breaks up. Now, if this one man or woman doesn't assume that they're God, they'll have to be daft, because
Yeah.
Buddhism didn't start off with a 15 lakh following, right?
Yeah.
It's 1.5 million people who are voting for you. Or
Yeah.
is it 1.5 million, or is it like, I can't do American conversion.
Yeah. So
Uh,
1 point. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
13 million is the population of what you may call it, Estonia. That's 5 seats, or 10
Yeah.
seats. That's 10 seats.
Yeah.
So if now imagine that, like like 15 million people, or like, 150 whatever thousand people or whatever are looking at you and asking you why the roads aren't built, why does manual scavenging exist, why are like a variety of civic and political and social and religious issues. So they want us to be less political. They want us
Okay.
to move away from asking difficult questions, because as a political philosopher John Dewey said, that there are variety of purposes of education. If the purpose of education is to skill people, then you're skilling them. But the
Yeah.
purpose of education is also to make them democratic citizens,
Yeah.
right? And that is the direction that we want to go in, which is that we want the world to have the ability to multiply, add, subtract, and God knows that is exceedingly important. But if we are robbed of the ability to ask a question, to or to know which question to ask, then then that is more grave. So we are uncommon people because we don't know. We are taught constantly that questions don't matter because our lives are not political. It is almost fashionable to be apolitical in urban setting without realizing that you are political. So the
Hmm.
Yeah.
biggest uphill challenge that we faced was urban people, because we have the game in Hindi and English. And a small contrast is that we played in a girls' college, in a girls' school in UP. And after
Yeah.
after the game, this girl comes running to us and tells us, you know what, like, is it really true? Can I be a politician? And we were like, yeah, do whatever the hell you want,
Hmm.
right? But that sort of response doesn't happen in urban setting. They'll play the
Yeah.
game, they'll be like, okay, cool, this was fine, and they'll go, because uh, uh, in very much in every sense that, like, politics doesn't matter to us because we don't need to deal with
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
it. So yeah, so our target audience is everyone are
Hmm.
uh, above the age of 15, 16. Our basic push earlier, because we are uncommon people completely unaware of the common world, was to, okay, we're going to take it to the people who need it most, people who do not have a vocabulary of politics and democracy. And then uh, that there was a mirror that was placed in front of us, and we turned around and came back to Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, to play with PLUs, with people like us, because we are the ones without that vocabulary. We are
Correct.
the ones without that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Very
so
interesting. And
that's
so, like, when you started developing the game, did you have a time frame in mind? Like, I want this out by, like the next elections or anything like that. Also, like now that you're seeing, okay, the game is trending, do you have expansion packs already lined up for something like this?
okay. So that's a really, really interesting question. As and thank you so much for asking it, because now I here is the here is a conversation about an idea, right? and
Yeah,
and 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 I would not want this to be a monologue as it has been, so I'm going to turn it around to you guys as well and be like, when you guys had the idea of Luma World, right, when you knew that you had to build games, how did it consume you? How long did it take from like seed to germination, and how did that drive you? Because that is the first question that you asked, right? Like, how
yeah,
long did it take for you to develop? How long does it take for any idea to develop? Months, years? And
yeah.
yeah, so like yeah, so I thought of the poll in whatever form in 2018, no, 2017. I built chips of paper, ran around trying to understand how to do it. A lot of people thought I was crazy. A lot of people thought made fun of me, including my sister Astha. I hope you hear this. Uh, and then you fight an uphill battle, right? And then all of a sudden someone decides to believe in you, and or you find like-minded people. I'm and then you guys work towards it over a period of, and then you think about it for so long, and one day it clicks and it happens, and it's luck as much as it's perseverance.
And
So we
at that time, Abir, were you already a board game hobbyist, or like did you know what game mechanics are, or what type of game mechanics exist, or what can you apply into your game? You had did nothing. Okay, interesting.
No,
no,
I really
I
go
like
back to the
like
sorry, I really go back to
go
the
for it.
point that you mentioned earlier, where voting is not an act. The act is actually citizenship, and to be involved. So I
Yes.
guess now you're moving away from the fact that hey, this is an elections game, and you really bring out the game of poll only when or dust it off the shelves every once in 5 years, but rather use it as a process
Yeah.
to bring people together to understand what is the role of all stakeholders within a democratic system, right? And I think that is the biggest challenge. If a game can do it, nothing like it. To actually live through democracy, like you said, in rural areas, whether it starts with the gram panchayats or goes up to the parliament. I mean, it still comes down to the fact that the way that we engage with democracy is through power systems. It's someone who has some sort of authority, and people are relying on that authority to provide some sort of solutions for them. While ideally a democratic system should work in the way that people themselves find solutions to a lot of their problems, and the authorities simply, act as I wouldn't say mediators, but facilitators
Yeah.
to make things happen, right? And I mean, the 1 to 15 lakh ratio is a great way to understand that. Listen, we are the ones that need to question, and they're the ones that need to answer, instead of it being the other way around. And it's not about us coming to the fact that once in 5 years they come to us and be like, hey, you know what, you need to come out and vote now because this is your time to act. Our time to act is between those two elections. And I think if you can do that through a game, and which poll, I mean, the way that you've described it seems so intriguing. I hope it gets a lot of people to think in the manner that wow, I need to be an active participant in this too, and not just be like, okay, I need to go vote. So I mean, kudos to that, and I think that's a great way of approaching the problem. So once again, I'm still not sure of how the idea would work with different demographics, because you made it in English and Hindi, and like you said, the urban class might perceive it as a coffee table game, while the another sect might view it as their daily bread and butter almost. This helps me to navigate through a lot more loopholes. It's really about what problems it solves, and if it can do that for the larger good, I think you've got an absolute winner on your hands, as long as more and more people get to play it.
No, so and that's a fascinating point, because this is exactly what we do. Whenever we play in schools and colleges, we ask people to look down and look at their shoes, right? And we say, what shoes are you wearing? So they'll be like, we buy these shoes, we buy that. So I said, you just walk blindly into a store and buy these shoes, and they're like, no. So I said, what is your favorite brand? So they'll be like, Adidas or Nike or Gola or whatever the hell, right? So I said, how did you arrive at this decision? Did you just like, did someone drag you by the hand and make you buy the first pair of shoes? You tried them on? No. You did your basic research. You looked up which shoe is going to be good for you. You felt it out. You did that. And voting is exactly like that. Because you have to read the political party's manifesto, because the basic function of political parties is for them to solve your problems. It is a
Mm.
simple problem solving mechanic. That's it,
Yeah.
right? The political party, and that's what we want to do, because the very fundamental structure, the point, like, like the structure of democracy, from your gram panchayat to the parliament, or from your a corporator, or your BDO to an MP or whatever, are built on the one fundamental thing, is to be able to ask for accountability and ask a bloody question, right?
Yeah.
The And that's what the poll does. It brings that conversation right back to the dining table. It empowers people to ask a question, and that's what we really wanted. And through that, we help you develop a vocabulary of problem solving, which is that,
Nice.
as a professor in my college said once, that you know you can learn how to sew a cloth, or become an engineer, but critical thinking and asking the right question at the right time is a skill,
Mm.
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Um and 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 through that, say for example, in our game, like I was playing it the other day, and one of the problems that we found in Amritsar back then, because these were all real problems, was that in Amritsar Dehat and all of that, because of the bad roads and just and whatever, and because it's a frontline region, um a lot of healthcare facilities don't go. So how do you
Mm.
solve for that? So then kids have to search for the right solution in terms of policy, positions that we've taken from actual political party manifestos, and they have to map those.
Okay.
So,
Nice.
you could, and a solution could be, bring in a healthcare mobile van, right? MMRs
Mm.
work, mobile medical, MMU, mobile medical units work. You take them to rural areas, so they develop a vocabulary of that. Or if someone is slightly cleverer, they'll be like, there would be a card that the state should have the ability to gather more revenue for themselves, so they can
Mm.
spend on essential issues such as healthcare or education. So when you
Mm.
can make that internal decision on behalf that my political party will do this, then you are asking, and then the next time it doesn't happen, you're like, okay, there's a cognitive dissonance, right? Like, if you made me a politician for a day, I would do this. So yeah, so
No,
that's
this brings a different train of thought in my head, because something Sajid and I have heard of late, and what we've been thinking about is, how do you create a legacy system within your game, right? Can you actually have components of the game that people can play and then activate as if they're levels later on the game? Do you think there's a possibility with the poll to have more endemic problems, let's say, because India is culturally very diverse, geographically diverse. Demographics are, I mean, like you said, Estonia is a country of 13 million. We are a country of 1.3 billion, right? Each Uttar
yeah,
Pradesh is probably going to be the fifth largest country to vote. So, I mean,
yeah.
when you look at that, do you think of customization with problems endemic to that particular region or state, or language, culture, etc.? Do you think there's the possibility of an expansion going into that? For example, like you said, Punjab has got,
Of course,
let's say, so
yeah. So, which is also that there's a national election which this game is catered to, and
yeah,
because the mechanic is universal, there is a state election that
Yeah.
mm,
is entirely possible. Then you can go down to the municipal or block level, because the argumentation and the idea of problem solving remains constant, right?
yeah,
Of
Yeah.
resource allocation and how you do it, because um and this was this, like, we were doing some math, right? And in some ways, that this answers that yes, problems are evolving and you can always add them, but right now we've built a kitty of 450 problems, and during our research we found that problems don't really change the way you
Yeah.
phrase them
Yeah.
and articulate them. It's like the problem of, so there are about 15 constant problems in any democracy the world over,
Okay.
right? You
Yeah.
will have problems of corruption, you will have problems of infrastructure, you will have, like, at some point you realize that these politicians have been working incrementally increasing things, but like if you fix the faucet here, the tub will break. If the tub is
Yeah.
fixed, then the ceiling light will fail. So, and in all, these guys are quite terrible at your work, your marammat, as they say in Hindi. And because there are so many like stakeholders and stuff, sure, but look, we have a kitty of 450 problems that we mined manifestos going back to 1980 or something.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
because the government of India's parliamentary website allows you to access every single question that an MP from a particular constituency is asked, like,
Yeah.
back to
Way.
whenever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in, like, online you can like go up to 67, I think, and if you go offline, then you can go right back into the Parliament library. Now, what that showed us, and believe it or not, problems do not change.
Hmm.
They don't. The farmer forever will face, agriculture will face procurement problems, farmer will face land tenement size problems, the
Yeah.
yield problems, all of that. So there are 4 or 6 set of problems per, buildings will fall, you know bridges will need work. The structure of a
Yeah.
society across democracy, so maybe this is how the British made us, right? Like democracy, we gave them verandas and pajamas, they gave us democracy. And these are problems throughout the world that stay, that the, the Gandhis are corrupt, the Bhuttos are corrupt, the Rajapakses are corrupt, Aung San Suu is corrupt. Corruption is such a low level, right, like anti-democratic thing. This system is not transparent. So democracy deals in fixed, not fixed. It's a polar system, right? They're with us, without us. So those problems don't change. The wording, the phrasing, like we're always on a brink of war. So
Yeah.
what we did was, we weren't very smart businessmen, because we're not smart businessmen, and we're not businessmen. We put all these 450 problems in one box. We said, "Just Simran, ji le apni zindagi." Right? It's 2.1 kilos. It has uh, it has 450 problems, and we're going to add more, and we're going to continue to add more. Over a period of time, we will take this to the regional, state level elections. Those problems also exist in our game, because each constituency is a national level fight, because 15 lakh people are voting for it. Like, um, and that's what you do it. What we did was, we were very, very careful to use political science for this. So we have flip seats, feudal seats, bellwether seats, all of that. Like a small seat in
Okay.
Gujarat called Valsad, and like we were playing in Somaiya College in Bombay, and some girl came from Valsad, and she's like, "Oh my God, no one even knows where it is on the map, but your game has
Wow.
it." So at at some level, it's also a national, like, nation building tool. I
Yeah.
hope someone is listening who's interested in nation and nationalism. Uh, so, so,
They always listen.
so yeah, so yeah, so in order, yeah, expansion pack ka matlab ki we can put more issues over a period of time, yes, but boss, those issues are going to be same, but just like the names will change. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shah Rukh Khan is the same character in each movie. And वो पिछले 20 सालों से एक ही character play करता है. One day he's called Amar, the other day he's called Raj, the other day he's called Ajay. Those are the problems in our country. You can call them
Yeah.
whatever. Do you think this farmer bill issue is new? No.
Yeah. Abhi, I have few questions for you. So, like, at any point, did you face any kind of backlash, be it political or non-political? Also, like, did you use this product as a tool for education, just going to schools or colleges, like, hey, you know what, this is a kit on understanding Indian political scenario?
Are these the two questions?
Yes, for now.
Yeah. Yes and yes. in terms of education, yes, we have been taking schools, colleges, anyone who has it, as like people who are in the business of taking board games and interactive like interventions. You guys know that you can only get so many people to play test, but also only so many people will pick up your phone after a point. You can't be like, तुझे क्या कर रहा है,
Yeah.
game खेलेगा? No, that, that's our life, right?
Yeah.
uh, so we played across, and we'll continue to play across. The 5 year cycle is still young. Uh,
Okay.
we've got uh, 3 years to go, and several hundred schools that we haven't played at. We also piggyback on networks. That is, so if
Cool.
you have an NGO, you have a school. If you have an NGO, school, social organization, all of that, hit us up. We will be there. We don't even like, we're non-commercial right now. We will, ours is more meaningful for democracy. So we will come to a school, college, like your aunt's house, your uncle's house, if you want us to even like facilitate a conversation between your bigoted grandmother and your like liberal 16-year-old daughter. Call us, we will bring the poll, put it, set it up on your dining table and get you to play it.
Yeah.
That has been our agenda. Our agenda has been to take these difficult conversations into drawing rooms, into boardrooms, into classrooms, into bedrooms, anywhere people will have us, we will go.
Hmm.
So when you are stretching yourself out this thin, of course you're going to face backlash, and we have very limited in a way, because like who takes a board game like developer carrying around this like really heavy box from classroom to classroom very seriously. I've been like threatened by a political party about their
Oh, really?
favorite game is actually to kill people. I was like, this is not it.
Wow.
um, yeah, they were like, what is your favorite game? And I was like, what is this game? So it was like, what is your favorite game? What is this game? You want to know our favorite game? And then that sort of went down like Hunger Games sort of situation. And I was just like, no, thank you. Can I please like stay next to this authority figure? Um, so yeah, so we faced backlash, and yes, we
What does your journo circle have to say about it? Also, like internationally, has your game reached other people, other countries outside of India?
yeah, it has. I got again. I am not a fan of like, there are two sorts of people in the world. One who believe that everything that they've achieved is like their hard work, and then there's the set of people who go through life and understand that life is entirely random and it's luck and hard work and where you're born and what you are. So I'm the latter. So I got lucky. uh, I was at the right time at the right place. I was on BBC World, which at 9 p.m., and it was bloody fantastic. I started and
Yeah.
stammered my way. And at some point, like the telelink wasn't working, so he was asking questions. I didn't give a shit. I was just
Oh
talking about
no.
like, "Hi, mom, thank you so much."
I was solve
uh,
global poverty and hunger problems.
yeah, Kranti. Uh, no, so that really opened up doors. I was featured in Vice News. So yeah, so about 55, 60 publications like carried off. Like even now,
Great.
anyone who plays or hears the game is very excited to talk because it is a compelling idea, and it
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
compelling and novel and penury leaving enterprise where like you are someone who's invested in a better world, but the world is not invested in bettering itself.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we we the journal circle was something that um I actually acquired post the game building, because that was something that we were pushing and pitching, and we were just at the right time at the right place doing one thing which was interesting. And then like if someone carries it, then someone else will carry it, then someone else will carry it, and word of mouth was very important for us.
Yeah. Nice. Um,
So I have a question. When let's rewind back to 2017. You've got this idea in your head, and you want like, okay, I need people to know about how democracy functions. We need to get things right.
Mm.
Why a game? There are multiple ways that you could have done it. There, different approaches that you could have taken. Why pick a board game? I mean, is it because you thought that was the best way to go out? Is it because that was your easiest way of representing facts or whatever you have? Or I'm going to stick my neck out and say, did you see that sudden surge of board games coming into India? A lot of people playing it, maybe some of your friends getting into board gaming, and you thought, hey, this is the best way to get the conversation started. What really made you opt for a game,
So,
and
like
that to a
as
kid?
a relatively bougie kid living in Delhi, we were we did play Catan back like as early as 2012. Like it's really great. Then you're like a Google kid, so you read like Catan, what like it's amazing. Oh, it's used as like a foreign policy teaching game on colonialism. So at some point there are these thoughts that you read a bunch of things and you don't know what is going to happen in your head, and
Yeah,
at some point what and yes, like the answer, the first part of the answer to your question is that all of these narratives that we've arrived, that we're talking about, are post facto. They're not pre facto. So we built the game, we played it, we understood the value of it. So and then we pushed it forward, right?
Mm.
As an organization, we had built a game before, like when I was a young person, and and I had nothing to do with it. It was just the organization, which they had built an anti-tobacco and anti-smoking game, so I remembered that. But the thing is that growing up, and because it was just man, and I'm going to say it in the Age of Empires, like Age of
yeah,
Empires was the single greatest thing that happened to me. Like, wow, right? Like, what a game. You get to build a civilization, you get to like battle things, you get to go back in time and be like historical kings. And
Yeah.
the other thing that happened was that, as I earlier said, that I made the mistake of reading a lot of philosophy. The other mistake that I had made was doing my BA in history, right? So much to the chagrin of people who haven't studied history, it's a method, it's a methodology, and it's a way of thinking. And all of your Romila Thapar, Sumit Sarkar, all your like these guys who've come under severe attack actually do
yeah,
one very simple thing. They do instill a sense of nationalism in you, right?
yeah,
They do instill a sense of like Ashoka was a goddamn amazing thinker, king. You understand Indian history for what it is as a contiguous whole. And at every
Mm.
time you face some sort of resistance back and forth, like Hinduism was challenged by Buddhism, Buddhism was challenged by the Ajivikas, who were challenged by someone else. So history shows you that cyclical thing. But what it did was it also showed me that we as a people aren't telling our stories,
Yeah.
yeah,
right? You need a Netflix to tell your story. Like you need some Gora Saab to come in, commission your work, and be like, please. And then the algorithm will take over, and that is what is there. So one part of why we built a board game was ideological,
Mm. Mm.
and that is very very important for us to understand. One is that the algorithm is beeping us out, and
Yeah.
that's why you are where you are and we are where we are, right? For you, the child's competence cannot be left to the randomness of an algorithmic learning curve because they're not speaking to you. For us
yeah,
it was that the the way that society was polarizing. How do you get people to talk?
Yeah.
yeah,
How do you get people to sit across a table? The most like joyous memories of my childhood were playing carom with my grandmother, right? and
Yeah.
and at some level the surge in board gaming is not that we finally figured out that cardboard works. The surge
Yeah.
in
Mm.
board gaming is nostalgia, right?
Mm.
It's There was a world where we were not glued to our screens, where we were looking at, like, playing Scotland Yard as kids and trying to figure out who Mr. X is, and someone
Yeah.
cheating and you catching cheating and you're like, you're a shitty person, but you guys are friends at the end of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that was it. We wanted to challenge. So the magazine that I was working at, called Hard News, was a small sort of center left magazine that got eaten up because we did not orient our SEO well,
Hmm.
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And where content is king and content is key, you are destroying a multitude of voices, of local narratives, of a variety of things. So it was
Yeah.
Yeah.
ideological, and board games became that way because, like, believe it or not, white people, we made them,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, so there was that.
Pretty cool. Lovely.
So, sorry, you have any
No,
questions
go
for
for
us?
it. Yeah.
I just wanted the viewers and the listeners to know, Abeer is, he mentioned this earlier, a social researcher. They also work on problem solving of topics such as bullying and gender biases. And Abeer, can you just highlight a bit more on that front, also the digital games that you're building for
Yeah, thank
you know, about these issues?
you. Okay, so in people are shitty. Like, that's the basic assumption that we need to run under.
Thanks.
And
Thank
when you
thank
give
you.
them that freedom of not revealing who they are, they become even more shitty,
Yeah.
right? And now, okay, so in an attempt not to sound too anti-nationally, uh, um, I would say that every time active citizenship comes up, there is
Mm.
a moment of hope for people like me, who are, pen and paper, old time, read the newspaper, I don't know where my phone is right now, sort of
Yeah.
people, right? Um, and over maybe 2012, when the Anna Hazare movement happened, 2011, 2012,
Yeah.
India Against Corruption, you had uh, the student JNU protests, you
Mm.
had the Jamia protests, you had Shaheen Bagh, you had a variety of these things. Now, I'm not getting
Yeah.
into the morality of it. Like, both sides can believe whatever they do, but whenever people come out onto the streets to ask for something in collective action, then it is interesting for people like us. But you
Yeah.
could have this moment where everyone is out on the streets and suddenly you're not. You're in lockdown.
Yeah.
Your entire
Yeah.
way of being citizens has been robbed from you, right? And the streets are inaccessible. You cannot go out. So you start, like, dealing with it online. And now the thing is, the online space is, well, let's say, that wasn't made for humans, right?
Mm.
Technology that is made and then humans catch up to it and then people do research, and you understand the value of research, right? Research makes things more accountable, like,
Mm.
Yeah.
well, so and we're constantly playing catch up with technology. And the second level is that because it's becoming ubiquitous, it's becoming cheaper, it's becoming a variety of more things. Everyone has that phone, everyone has a laptop, everyone has a computer, like, some way of, like, access, right?
Yeah.
And 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 we aren't taught a vocabulary of protection or self-interest. Online you can go to the police, offline you can go to the police if you're harassed, and that too, like, many layers of complication and hurdles and jumps and all of that. um
Yeah.
but online you don't have that freedom, because online is a privately owned public space. Like,
Yeah.
asking Facebook for your human rights is as good as going to Pantaloons or Big Bazaar and standing in the middle of that foyer and saying "Mujhe adhikar do." Right? Like, it's like going in the middle and saying "Hum wahan apne kagaz nahi dikhayenge." Right? Like,
Yeah.
it makes
Yeah.
no sense. And because this entire ecosystem is determined by profits, it's not looking after us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens to at-risk communities there? What happens to queer folk? What happens to women? What happens
Mm.
to the freedom of expression online? Right? And I was on a podcast with Cyrus Brocha a few weeks ago, and one of the
Yeah.
things that we were talking about was the freedom of speech online. Does Munawar Faruqi have the right to crack a joke, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
that Goer pilot saying, someone is an idiot and then losing that job because of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you again get that conversation back to 14, 15, 16, 20, 30-year olds who automatically have been told that asking questions is wrong? You
Mm.
being political is uh, being political is bad. Um,
Mm.
to ask a question means that you've done something wrong. You are not being like that. So no
Yeah.
one talks about the bad things that they do, right? Like queer folk are maligned, catfished, harassed they online, and then because technology research and like care is catching up to technology, you are saying, "Acha, you have done X, Y, Z. That is why you're in the shitter. Please don't do it next time." Right?
Yeah.
But no one is making you experience the process of being online and telling you,
Mm.
Yeah.
okay, this is where you can do that. So that's what we did. We told four stories in a made up town called Antarjal Nagar, which is internet town. One is the
Yeah.
story of a queer boy called Karthik who is catfished. The game simulates the process of catfishing, where someone pretends to be someone they're not, and they attract you. So it's up to you to be able to figure out what the red flags are. But the thing about interactive fiction is that bad things do generally happen. So it's a process of bad things. The other game is called Kritika. It is the story of a 20-year-old. It is the story of every girl who finds herself online, who says
Yeah.
something which goes like viral. And this young girl supports the Me Too movement and is harassed and is threatened to be doxxed. So she has to protect herself online. The third story that we're working on is the story of freedom of expression. It is, again, the story of their father called Rakesh, who finds himself uh, finding out that in Antarjal Nagar there is a factory called Steel and Co, which is polluting Data Nadi, and yeah, is polluting Nadi, and the residents of Nagrik Basti are falling sick. And it is the story of a doctor and this journalist. One of them who's a whistleblower, and one of them is the journalist. And you have to help the journalist find the story, and you have to help the activists say whatever they have to online. Or the doctor, he's not an activist, he's a doctor, say whatever you want online. And once the story comes out and once the article is done, then the bad people go to jail. So this is a story of Erin Brockovich, if no one has
Mm.
caught on. Ways that we keep ourselves safe these
True.
days.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
it's great. Yeah. Sorry. There's a bit of lag, so.
yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it's fascinating to hear a lot of the things that you're saying, because we speak to, I guess now we're speaking to both ends of the spectrum in the board game world as such. We spoken to guys who are creating these small niche games that are, purely as a business. We've spoken to, some of the big players, not just in India but abroad as well. The publishing houses where they take your games and they license it out, multiple thousands of copies. And I really like the idea of, you're like this, almost harbinger of social change through, multiple ways of doing it. One with, democratic change, two with the aspect of bullying and things like that. On one of our previous conversations, you spoke about your game about fake news, which is just as intriguing. There's so many other facets of our current world that really require changing, and we're seeing a lot of, young Indians come up with ideas about how to do it, not with the goal of profit.
mhm,
So it could be, like, we work towards helping kids get the right kind of education to adapt to, let's say, the real world, right? We know people who work on sustainability and waste management, climate change, etc. And of course, there's the other spectrum that you're working on. How do you balance the aspect of saying, hey, this game is intended for a certain audience, it drives a social message, um, but I need to make copies of it, I need to make sure that people play. There, of course, there's a certain amount of investment involved. I know you work with a lot of stakeholders to do that, but do you ever stop yourself and say, hey, you know what, the business side of things is maybe not suited for this game? Is that something that you look at, let's say, before a game and say, hey, I'm going to create these copies that provide a certain action that go through it? I'm not really concerned about where it's sold, how people buy it, where they play it, who really spreads the message. Like you said, even with the magazine that you work for, the SEO front really doesn't matter as much as people giving you real, first-hand feedback about, hey, this made a change. Thanks for pointing out Valsad on the map, or thanks for letting giving me a voice where otherwise I wouldn't have one. How do you map that difference?
So I think the question, if I was to like bring it down, is that what is the motivation? Is the motivation the feel good factor of education and people giving me feel like you've heard us, or is it
Yeah,
that like, okay, this is monetizable, this is not, and what is the
yeah,
fine balance between both? To
yeah,
answer this question, I would like to talk about one person who's very like near to you guys, not near to me geographically, is a gentleman called Adar Poonawala. Right? This man, and you guys are laughing, but it's absolutely necessary to talk about Adar Poonawala at this moment. Adar Poonawala built and has produced millions of doses of a vaccine, which is absolutely necessary for society to go back to normal. Now, 60% of our country doesn't want
yeah,
it. Correct. So, right. So there's this thing that he got thanked for, and he's like, yes, I will build this for social change. It gets put out in the market, and then there's 60% resistance to it. Right. Our games are the vaccines. Our games in many ways are that bitter pill that one needs to take. But there has to be an acceptance on the user end for it, which is where all of us, I think, are collectively struggling. That
Mm.
yeah,
we can build you that game, we can tell you that message, we can make it like foolproof. You give us 6 months to build it, we'll take 6 months. You give us a year to build it, we'll take a year. You give me 48 hours to build it, I will build you something on sheets of paper and we'll work it out. That thing
yeah,
will
Mm.
be built, right? Then we can bring this thing to the market and place it there, right? We can play test, we can do a variety of things, and then the hope is, yes, one day this will become Catan, or one day this will become like Twilight Struggle or Pandemic or like that. But we're not there as yet, right?
yeah,
um mm, we build like relatively expensive things because printing manufacturing is expensive, IP is expensive. We do not have the ability to sell our right to like Sharma ki Dukan and like print Katan for 349 or 649 and then just sell it at scale, right?
mm,
Our conversations aren't at the level of, because our user acquisition is still growing. You are operating in one space, I am operating in another. Someone else, Bharat 600 BC, is operating in another. Nemesis is operating somewhere else. Everyone is operating in their own silos, and we're all, because we've been led to believe that this market is fragmented and small and niche, and you are so small and you are so niche, and tum to niche ke hi niche ho. You are like you are like 16 people, and I hope you're able to target those 16 people in Valsad,
yeah,
right? Like it's difficult, um, but it's not, because the thing is that what is holding us back is production cost. What is holding us back is and a favorable ecosystem. And
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
thought like I wouldn't be the sort of person being like, chalo aaj ease of business, doing business ke bare mein baat karte hain, guys, kyunki like whatever, because that's not it. It is that the state, the people have to be open to a variety of interventions. We are a state of people who are fine eating like dal chawal every day forever. So
Yeah.
like they're not going to be open to like ये क्या है, ये से क्या सीखेंगे हम, ये कॉम्प्लेक्स है, ये डिफिकल्ट है, ये क्या है, बैठना पड़ेगा, we'll have to do this, कौन आएगा, कौन सिखाएगा, do you think I can learn this afterwards, do you think we'll be able to play? It seems a little difficult, right? Like, okay, this illustration, like, okay, shut up and sit down. We've got something new for you to do. Right? Give me 25 minutes of your attention and we'll work it out. And when they sit, and I think you guys would also know that, like, there's a little moment of hesitancy, and then they sit
Yeah.
and then they play, right? But
Yeah.
we all
Yeah.
need to be able to do this together in a combined space where we all work. So
Yeah,
hopefully, inshallah,
the most common feedback we've heard is when they sit down is, "Arey, I thought this was like Monopoly," and we go like, "Well, it isn't," and they go like,
thought it
"Okay,
was like
fine."
Monopoly, right? Right? Yeah. uh, and that's what it is. So inshallah, if all things work out, we will organize uh, a civic competition where with all of us in one place, we will try to get as many kids together,
Hmm.
and we're going to blow their mind, and that has to happen,
Cool.
right?
Yeah.
It, it's
We are,
either that or getting the Gora Babu from Netflix to produce the Indian version of Queen's Gambit, or maybe Prime Video,
yeah,
getting people under to play the poll, or like have Tari
yeah,
Zameen playing Luma World games. It's one of that. So then
yeah,
everyone goes like, "This is it.
yeah,
This is what we need
and
to do." And
yeah, and the thing is that we need to collaborate. We need to take care of each other in some way or another. And even as I think of this, I'm like, profit to nahi katega. And I
Well,
don't even
well,
care about profit.
we'll have to think about it because Abir did invite us on BBC World. Well,
uh,
Abir, um,
even before we
uh,
knew each other, guys, before we were friends.
yeah,
Um,
no, Abir, I also want to hear more about the SMART initiative. If you can highlight that a bit, where
okay,
you guys are conducting, yeah, uh, imparting educational lessons over radio. That sounds pretty cool, actually.
yeah. So the NGO that I'm housed in runs a community radio station. So I don't know if you guys are aware, there are three tiers of radio. One is private, one is public, one is community radio. Private
Yeah.
is Big FM, Red FM, all of that. Public is AIR and like your like the government, and the community radio stations, which largely run on the frequency of 90.4 FM, are community radio stations. So like for example, when the coronavirus pandemic happened, we were communicating uh, about a lot of health facilities, all of that through the community radios. When
yeah,
elections happen, a lot of like feed in your forms, do that. A lot of education already, a lot of public awareness happens. So we work in a region called Mewat, and
Hmm.
Mewat is, I don't know if you guys know about what minority concentration districts are, MCDs. During the UPA term, there were 90 districts in India which were identified as MCDs or minority concentration districts, which have like higher like Christian, Muslim, all of that
hmm,
population. And generally, what they have found is that their like situation is pretty bad in terms of HDI, Human Development Index, and all of that. Now,
hmm,
where we work is a region called Mewat, erstwhile Mewat, now Nu, and it's a Muslim majority area. And what we found was that people were failing math. So what we did was that we built a curriculum called radio tuition, radio math tuition, where we would bring one like tutor, and he would or they would teach math through the radio. And because it was like offline and you were following a certain textbook and you were listening to a person, that started improving the rate of passing in Mewat year on year. And as I don't know if the viewers know this, but we've at Smart and Radio Mewat have recently asked Luma World to send us a bunch of their math games, and we're going to try them out and hopefully share videos and do that. and bring in young kids and try to figure out what that would look like.
Yeah, yeah.
When we and that's what we're gonna do. Maybe like next time you guys fly into Delhi, you let me know and I'll put you in my car and then we can go and like a week earlier call on the radio for young kids to show up for math fun. We're very happy to
That'll
do
be,
that.
That'd be amazing.
So yeah, so the community radio station serves a very fundamental purpose within the community. You have a 25 to 30 kilometer listening radius, and that's what we did. We started programming math on the radio.
great. I've never heard of this concept before. I mean, I know radio was used to impart a lot of knowledge back in the days, but
Yeah.
teaching math or kids through something like this is pretty cool.
And it brings me to something that I saw on the news maybe towards the end of August, where there was this whole debate about how India is divided digitally, right? Like you get a whole bunch of urban school kids who've got their iPads, and if the iPads don't work,
Hmm.
if they go it down in disgust, then they've got a backup laptop, then they've got 3 or 4 devices that they
Hmm.
can work with. While the kids in rural India that barely even get the opportunity to they don't even have textbooks, like they're reliant on their own school to kind of go in and give their teacher, they've got their slates and that's about it. And there was this village in Bihar where they set up loudspeakers and the kids used to come, and socially distance, and some guy speaking through the mic, and that's how they had their lessons taken. And using technology like this, at least with the radio, maybe a radio set, um, uh, knowing very well that it could really be costing not that much. I know it's still tech and they still need to invest in something like that, but even getting one radio set, from a grandfather or something like that, pan bidi shop, just
Your
like putting
phones
it
have
out. Yeah, no, but the fact is that they don't even have access to the phones, right? Like the kids,
yeah.
because you generally have to borrow their parents' phones, and either the father's away at the field or he's gone to earn his daily wage, and these kids are sitting by themselves with the slate, and it becomes a huge challenge. Even one guy having the radio and connecting it, to something like that can really transform, because that divide is going to be there. The kids getting left behind, losing a year of school, you simply unable to do like basic math, like you said, being able to add and being able to, for a lot of them, even going to school meant that they get their midday meal, otherwise they have to skip that. Their parents are unable to
Hmm.
even feed them. Suddenly you have this thing where they're at home, a lot of them might have even abusive parents, they're forced to live with like bigger bullies and things like that. It becomes a huge challenge. The fact that schools are like safe zones for them, and having an initiative like this where you've got that, the airwaves really sending out your education instead of having a physical person, or you know I find that to be amazing. Like Sajid said, and something that you said earlier as well, we are not common men, right? We have the privilege of doing so much more. But when we really realize what are
Hmm.
the small problems that kids or families have in these regions, it's an eye opener for us to think of. We can think of 1,000 ways that will benefit them, but it's really about acting upon even one of them that really makes the change. So yeah, great stuff with the radio as well.
I I think what we all must understand, and this is a thought that I've had in plenty, is that we are uncommon people for another reason. We are uncommon people because, man, it matters to us, right? Like that like if kids don't get educated, if things don't work out where we are, like one of the things that the pandemic sort of really like hurt me was that it took our ability to ask why, right? Why are there
Yeah,
nakas everywhere? Why
correct.
are we, subjected to this, that? And math is also asking why, because it's a question, right? Like, why is this happening? What is the answer? How will I get there? Math is a
Yeah,
journey and the very basic structure of how we look at society. A friend of mine gave me a book called Logicomics. I think you guys should definitely look it up. It's about Bertrand Russell's journey with math. and
Oh,
Oh, nice.
nice.
how, yeah, definitely, just look it up. It's phenomenal. And at the heart of it, you are looking for rationality in the world, and that's what we are. We're
Hmm.
Yeah.
trying to find the questions of rationality, because math was the first thing that disproved the sort of godly nature of society, right? Like there are gods, and math
Yeah.
happened, and you're like, no, there aren't, because you can't
Yeah.
prove it.
Yeah.
Um, and we're uncommon because we are looking for those answers. And there are
Yeah.
so many people who don't have it, and there are so many people living around us who are okay not seeing it.
Yeah.
And in many ways, for us, the journey is for everyone to be able to see it. And it is a Sisyphean task. It is perhaps 10 times harder than what other Poonawala is going through right now. At least he has an international audience.
Yeah.
Uh, but and when I talk about our games and international audience, what you'll realize is that even there we're competing in a deeply racist environment. Luma World or whatever I do does not have the same resources as some like Spiegel company, or
Yeah.
like some like Hasbro or Fun School, not even Fun School or whatever, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And our job is Sisyphean because we're looking to create a demand where there is none,
Hmm.
Yeah.
because people don't know that they want this. If
Hmm.
we're
Yeah.
able to fix that, and we're able to fix that together, then we're making a
Yeah.
change for like the next Luma World, or the next
Yeah.
people who want to bring up the poll, because we're not working for ourselves here. We're working for a cause that you sit down together, play together, be together, build collaborative things together, and that's what it is. Ours is a politics of collaboration. Ours is a politics of change through play. Ours is a politics of problem solving, of critical thinking, of question and answers.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's a Sisyphean task. So we are uncommon people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
With that deep thought, and I now we've seen Abid the game designer, we've
Guys,
seen
should
Abid the
I?
historian, Abid the journo, and now Abid the
Philosopher.
philosopher.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to lighten things up and ask you which is your personal favorite. So is it the game designer, is it the historian, is it the journo, or is it the philosopher? Which
I
of those?
think, Chuck, all of this, I think I should just do motivational talks and get on Astha TV and right,
Yeah.
like I think I can bullshit my way through most of life.
I mean,
Uh,
as you get to showcase the games, we are
ah,
okay with that.
yeah, dude, I spoke so well that I also got goosebumps. I also was read up to action. It was like either you hire
There
me
was
to
a
write
bit
the end speech to like Hollywood sports films, remember the Titans, all of that. I can do
nice. Abir, so this is a question we ask everyone who comes on our talks. If you can tell us maybe 3 to 4 of your favorite board games, and then we'll take a jab at it.
I tell you four of my favorite board
Yeah,
games.
yeah,
Splendor, amazing game.
okay. Uh-huh.
Uh, Azul, great game.
Uh,
Uh, are you guys playing Azul? Sick.
Yeah, we.
It's such a good game. I love Sushi Go.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
And I don't know. Have you played Twilight Struggle?
No, not
No,
yet.
no,
We
we
just
haven't.
heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good game. It's a game on the Cold War. It's really good.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you can ping me these names and even the name of the book that you mentioned, the
The Bertrand Russell one.
yeah,
Logic Comics. Logic Comics.
Logic Comics. Okay, cool. Venkat,
They know my favorite games by now. We
actually,
do it every time.
everyone knows that.
But something that we're going to be trying out soon is this game called Wavelength. So we were just having a discussion about it earlier this morning. That's something that we're going to order in and we're going to try out.
We,
Yeah.
we
I'm
we
gonna
have this
order
thing where
Scythe and Wingspan.
oh nice, yeah, Wingspan is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Scythe, I mean, I've been seeing it through one of our board game cafes that we follow.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Scythe, but maybe I'm the odd man out. But I don't know. I
I haven't
maybe
played it. I just really want to.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I uh, I like King Domino a lot. I keep telling this because like I just love pattern matching. And one
Mhm.
game we really love in our office where we have like fights after the game is Coup. Like we bloody love Coup.
I love Coup. I
Yeah.
love Coup. Coup is great.
We end
And
up
as I was
fighting.
trying to explain to you, and there is an Indian like antecedent to it. Raja Mantri Chor Se Bhai. That's Coup.
Yeah.
Social deduction is if you like Coup, get Secret Hitler.
We've yeah, someone had
Yeah.
recommended that also. Okay.
We're gonna try and do that. Yeah.
ठीक
Cool.
है.
Yeah.
No, so here is
Do you
my
have
real
any?
question to you guys. Do you guys prefer
Yeah.
Euro style, American style, or should we start developing an Indian style?
I think we should start developing an Indian style. But to be honest, we like our Euro games. I'm not going to lie. I mean, yeah, you know what? I really take each game on its merit. I'm not really concerned about what kind of game it is, what's the mechanics, and blah blah blah. I'm just really concerned about who I'm playing with and what I'm taking from the game at the end. Once it goes back in the box. Like,
Yeah,
am I still going to be thinking about that
yeah.
game? Do I have that urge to play again? Um, am I thinking about strategies? After like 2 hours, like shit, man, I could have done that in that game. If it ticks that box, I don't care
Mhm,
what it is. It could be Uno. It
mhm.
could be I don't know, one of the most complex war games you can find. I'm okay with that. That completely works with me.
I think it's the same for me because Venkat and I we play a lot of games together. One thing that's important for me is the amount of time it takes to understand the game and also complete the game. Like I can't play games over like 1.5 hours. That's a bit too long for me. Up to an hour is still all right. Yeah,
But I think we should have an Indian style. We should have something
definitely.
that is very
Like that has a bribing mechanism. Uh,
Poll
no
has a
I
bribing mechanism.
oh, really?
yeah
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
but I feel something that really comes to us by nature, that maybe is not there in a lot of games, and I would really like to see more games with that. Are negotiations, like hardcore negotiations.
Jugaad.
Like let's change this aspect of it. Hey, maybe can we try this? Like team up. I mean, I'm okay with the teaming up, the ganging up and stuff. Or like let me go for this time. Basically, like what we do with Monopoly, right? Like how Monopoly should not be played is the Indian style. Like, अरे यार जाने दे मेरा rent माफ कर दे इस बार.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
yeah.
So I
I'm
feel that,
sending you guys the poll the moment I get back. So you tell me whether
Okay,
that's an Indian style.
cool.
yeah, definitely. We're looking forward
Yeah,
to
we're
that.
excited.
Yeah.